Hey, what's up fellas? And welcome to my Donkey Kong Bananza Advanced Movement Guide. This video will be separated into multiple sections going over the different movement techs. So here are all the timestamps if you want to skip straight to a certain tech. Before we get into the guide, I'm going to assume you understand the basics of DK's movement, such as surf cancels, chunk stalls, etc. As well as including basic movement techs such as FATs and AFATs. If not, then I'd recommend watching this general movement guide by JakeZSR, as well as this FAT and AFAT guide by yours truly. But hey, I'm not going to stop you from watching this video first. Now that that's all out of the way, let's get right into the video. Like last time, I'll be writing both button combos for A and B jumpers down below, but I'll be saying the actual actions used when talking in the video. To start us off, we have a new and very cool version of FAT, called the EleFAT, so as you can imagine, it's done by the elephant. This input sequence is exactly the same as an AFAT, except there's a chunk pull, done by the elephant of course, in between the first jump and the Turfsurf. One thing to note is that you cannot be pressing the Turfsurf button at the same time as the chunk pull button, otherwise the tech won't work. So you want to have enough space between your chunk pull input and your Turfsurf input, while still doing it fast enough to be in your AFAT window. The timing can be a little tricky, but it is very possible to get consistent, and it is very much worth learning for such a cool and swag tech. So when done right, it should look something like this. Now the cool thing about this tech is that it can be done both out of a chunk jump as well as out of a coyote jump. So you can do both this, as well as this. And then when combined together, you can even do this. Pretty cool, huh? Now I know what you're saying. Twirly, this tech is broken. I can just keep EleFATting as long as I have elephant balls stalled. But unfortunately, after doing an EleFAT from a chunk jump, you won't be able to do any more EleFATs until you've touched the ground again. Okay, so this guy is stupid. So on the time between recording and editing this video, some pretty significant movement tech came out that makes this statement wrong. So I'm gonna go over it right after past Twirly finishes explaining EleFATs. Here's the timestamp if you want to skip straight to it. This is because after doing an EleFAT from a chunk jump, the next time you try to jump off your chunk, you'll get this weird unjump sort of thing, like this. So even though this tech might not be as broken as it initially seemed, it is still a very, very useful tech for both going fast and also going a little bit further than just an AFAT chunk jump. One tech that is pretty much exclusive to EleFATs is dropping your chunk while still on your surf for a little stall, just to make it a little bit further. So when combined all together, you can do stuff like this. And if you prefer, you can also do your punch/chunk stall in between your EleFATs like this. Both variations go the same distance as far as we know, so it mainly just comes down to personal preference. But I'd recommend learning both stall variations as they both have certain use cases. Hopefully now, you're EleFATting your balls off. Now let's get on to the next tech. Okay, so the new tech I was talking about is called, I kid you not, FARTs and EleFARTs, standing for Fast Air Regrab Turfsurf and Elephant Fast Air Rolled Turfsurf respectively. I'm actually going to go over EleFARTs first and then FARTs, as it will be easier to explain that way. We basically found that you can do an AFAT from a roll and not just a jump. So to do EleFARTs are actually extremely easy if you already know how to do EleFATs, as all you have to do is replace the initial jump input with a roll, and if you do it right, it should end up looking something like this. So basically what this means is that we can now do 3 EleFATs/EleFARTs in one jump, although we do lose our mid-air roll as we use that to do the EleFART. But now, we can do stuff like this. Okay, so, next up is fart, and since we can't pull a chunk after a roll like the elephant can, it's a little bit more complicated. So the way we get around this is by first throwing the chunk, and then rolling and re-grabbing into it before it can get away, and then pressing Turfsurf into attack plus jump. And if you do it right, it should look something like this. The timing for this is quite tight, and is actually even tighter if the chunk is really small. And in some cases, if the chunk is actually kind of big like this disc, then you might even have to delay the roll regrab slightly. Now I will say, this tech is pretty hard, and can be somewhat inconsistent because of the different chunk sizes, so don't be too upset if you can't get it super consistently right off the bat. But as long as you practice the general timings, and know the adjustments for the different chunk sizes, then this is very possible to get down consistently. And if you get it down, you might even be able to start doing stuff like this. Alright, now that you've learned how to fart, I'm gonna send you back to past twirly. The next tech I'm gonna go over is another FAT variation, called the Surf AFAT, and like the name suggests, it's an AFAT done from a surf. This tech isn't used too much, but it is super useful when wanting to do an AFAT when surfing on something damaging, whether it be spikes or lava, etc. The inputs are a little different from a regular AFAT, as you are already in a surf when you start the tech. So the inputs are as follows: jump, into unsurf, into turf surf, into attack plus jump. So it should end up looking something like this. A slightly more optimal version of the Surf AFAT is to speed up before jumping for better momentum. Although when doing this, you want to make sure your speed up input is spaced enough between your initial jump input, otherwise the speed up will also be buffered as a stall, thus not letting you use your stall after your Surf AFAT. If it's spaced correctly, it should look like this. And if it's spaced incorrectly, then it will look like this. The timing's a little tricky, but once you've got it down, you might be able to start doing things like this. And if you want to do some really cool shit, try combining this with EleFATs. Now how swag is that? Okay, enough showing off. Let's get right to the next movement tech. And for the last FAT variation I'll be going over in this vid, is quite a funny one, but it also has its niche use cases. And it's called a damage boost AFAT, and it's done by taking damage with a chunk in hand, into pressing turf surf, into pressing attack plus jump. And if you've done it right, it should look something like this. It's a pretty simple one, but it's also a pretty funny one. Alright, on to the next tech. In my FAT guide, I briefly went over a tech called a CTJ, which is a frame-perfect tech done by grabbing a chunk into jumping on the exact right frame to store another mid-air jump, which could be used to do stuff like CTJ, into FAT, into AFAT, which is a quick reminder looked something like this. The problem with this is doing consistent frame-perfect inputs isn't the easiest thing in the world, but luckily for us, a much easier and way more consistent variation has been found, called the LCTJ, standing for Ledge Chunk Triple Jump. Like the name suggests, this is done by grabbing a chunk from a ledge, but unlike a normal CTJ, there is no frame-perfect jump input done, only a grab, into turf surf, into speed up. But unfortunately, since you don't do the frame-perfect jump input like in a regular CTJ, you aren't able to do the initial FAT for the LCTJ, so the most you can end up doing is an LCTJ into an AFAT, which if done right should end up looking something like this. So even though it doesn't go as far as a regular CTJ, it is still very useful for general movement and getting around places fast. Alright, on to the next tech, and it's a bit of a weird one. This next tech is called a CRJ, standing for Chunk Regrab Jump, and it's actually got the exact same button combo as an EleFAT, but the situations they are used in are a little bit different. It's done by chunk jumping just before touching the ground, into regrabbing the chunk from the chunk jump, into turf surf, into attack plus jump. And if you do it right, it should look something like this. To be quite honest, this tech isn't really that useful anywhere except for Surface Bridge, and even then, it's only really useful if you're planning on running ostrichless, which I'm also currently making a guide for, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. But if you end up doing it right, then it should end up looking something like this. And that's pretty much it. I hope this guide was helpful enough for you guys to learn all these cool and swag techs. And as a thank you for making it to the end of this video, here's a little montage of what you can do once you've mastered all of these techs. I hope you enjoy. Hey, what's up guys? I hope you found this video as helpful and entertaining. I just wanted to let you guys know that I pretty much stream every day on twitch.tv/twirlyoz, and I'm much more active over there if you ever wanted some advice, just to talk, or even just to see some Swag Monkey gameplay. So make sure to follow if you're interested. I hope to see you guys in my chat, and who knows, I might even be streaming right now. Alright, enough shilling. Have a good one fellas. Laters.